Welcome to our 2016 webinar series. This year, timing is everything. This year, we'll be telling your clients stories just when you need to hear them and share them with your clients. After all, when you tell a story, it makes all the difference. If I told the story of the 3 little pigs to a group of 5-year-olds, it would be a fable. If I told the story of the 3 little pigs to a group of general contractors at a conference, it would be a case study. And if I told the story of the 3 little pigs at a summer campfire with a bunch of preteens, it would be a scary Cujo story. And if I told the story of the 3 little pigs on a first date, well, there probably wouldn't be a second date. Each month, we'll tackle fears your clients have about income security and wealth preservation using innovative and creative insurance solutions. This month, we'll recognize the diversity in insurance, specifically for new families and those needing a policy review. Each month's series will last about 50 minutes and must be logged on for the full 50 minutes to receive CFP credit. And since timing is everything, please ask questions as you have them by typing them in. We'll do our best to answer them as they come in. Today's story will be recorded and will be posted on our website within a week in case you've missed any of the plotline. And throughout 2016, like the saying, the more you read, the more you know. The more you watch, the more CFP CE credits you'll earn. You can earn 8 credits, 1 for each month. Today's storyteller reads a lot, constantly monitoring the insurance and financial services industries to ensure your clients are getting the most up-to-date recommendations. He joined LLIS in 2003 with a CFP and MBA and has been writing the LLIS story as president and CEO since 2013. And now, Mark Maurer.
Thank you, Claudia. And so today we're going to get started talking about the month of June. The month of June was named after the Roman goddess Juno. And as soon as I can move forward with the presentation, we will do just that. So for fun, we're going to go this way. So Juno, the Roman, thank you for your patience. Juno is the Roman goddess of love and marriage, also pregnancy and childbirth. Trust me, even though there's a little glitch, it's worth it. Just wait. But June, it's a favorable month to be married. And so in this month of June, which is hotter than Hades here in Florida already, we're going to talk about term insurance, disability insurance. Let's talk about the ownership of policies. How do we protect those that we love? Even all the way to the long-term care hybrid policies. And so Juno, being the goddess of love, a lot of times puts people together. And what says love like term insurance? Just kidding. But Juno often puts people together, like Claude here. Claude, he's riding his bike, riding around town. He looks pretty happy. And so sometimes I have advisors say, Mark, I have this young single client. How much life insurance does he need for income replacement? And the answer is, well, there might be a need for income replacement if he dies, but there's not really a loss to anyone. Claude's a single guy. He's got an apartment, kind of a dirty couch, probably a nice TV, and half a bike. So if at his death, there's really not a financial loss to anyone. And so there's not really large or any almost need for life insurance. But what happens? Well, Claude finds the other half of his bike. And guess who's on it? Claudia. So Juno does what she does, and she puts Claude and Claudia on that tandem bike, and just look at how happy they are. And so now they're dating, they're a couple, they're going steady. They're an item. Still, is there a real need for life insurance at this point? Well, there's not really anything, there's not a contract, there's nothing that joins them together. So if something happened to Claude, Claudia's just thinking, he was a nice guy, had a pretty cool tandem bike, but I think I'll just give my old friend David Beckham a call. That's what happens. They're just dating. There's not really need for life insurance at this point, especially term. But Claude and Claudia, you know what? Juno was watching, and Claude and Claudia, they get together. They tie a knot, the knot. Now there's a contract, actually, that their assets are joined together in both states. So they have each other. Now it's a time to review beneficiaries because maybe Claude or Claudia did have life insurance from before. You know what? If they signed up for some group term from their work, Claude didn't know who Claudia was. His beneficiary, probably mom and dad. So now is a good time to review some of those beneficiary changes because that's who he would have named his beneficiary when he first started working at his employer. But now it really should be each other because they are married, have those insurance policies. Changed from mom and dad to the new spouse. But still, even today, if something happens to Claude, poor Claude, I'm going to get rid of him a couple more times. But poor Claude, Claudia says, oh, we just got married. You know what? But if something happened to Claude, I've got David Beckham's cell phone number. So I'm just going to give him a call. There's not, again, we'd be sad. We'd be sad if Claude died. But there's not a huge or almost any financial loss to Claudia had he died. Now, ignoring prenuptials and kind of complicated things, I'm just talking our normal, average, ordinary couple. Claudia moves on, maybe trades up to David Beckham. Not a real big financial loss. Oh, wait. Now I think they're British in this picture, but hey, they're British and they bought a British townhome. They're excited because then I know they don't live in Florida because they're wearing way too many layers. But they're excited. They have an apartment. They have a month-to-month lease. Something happens to Claude. She's just thinking about shirtless David Beckham. There's, again, a month-to-month lease. Maybe we could argue that they signed a 12-month lease based on the fact that they both earn their incomes. It's not really a huge loss if something happened financially. Sadness, yes. Financial loss. So if you see where I'm going with this, a lot of times younger people have very limited needs for life insurance for income replacement for each other. Wait, now something's changed. What do they own? Now they own a house, which, for most people is their largest single asset. It's also a pain sometimes. Sometimes they probably do wish they could move back to that British townhome and have somebody else take care of stuff for them. But you know what? Now they own a house. Now there is something that most people couldn't just write a check for to pay off if one of the two working halves of the couple were to pass away. So now we're looking at something different. So let's take the mortgage. Now, I'm not going to tell you all too much about how a mortgage works because you know it. But let's say their mortgage is $350,000 today. So if Claude died, Claudia would need to come up with $350,000 to pay off the debt on the house. But that's today. In 10 years, assuming they've been paying the premium, making their mortgage payments every year, as you know, the mortgages are kind of front-loaded on interest. So after 10 years, the mortgage debt is only $280,000. In 10 years, assuming they've worked, paid off the mortgage over 10 years, she only needs $280,000 to pay off the mortgage in 10 years. In 15 years, she needs $231,000, 20, 25, 30. So in 30 years, so it's a 30-year mortgage, in case you hadn't guessed that. In 30 years, there's no need, in this case, for a life insurance death benefit to replace this particular debt because the debt's gone. So if anybody has listened to me before, gotten a policy review from me, talked with me about term insurance, you know I like the term layering. Here's a perfect example of where a particular need is less in the future, because of what I do every year along the way. In this case, it's paying off the mortgage, servicing that debt, so that the debt's smaller as time goes out. So let's look at a term layer, like this delicious piece of cake. Every time I see this, I get so hungry. So we can make a layer. All three of those policies add up to $350,000 right now. And then as time goes on, we have Claude's policies. There's the 3 premiums for $319 a year combined for those 3 policies. And for Claudia, $268. So small premiums for $350,000 of coverage that matches the mortgage pretty well. So why do I say maybe not? Well, most insurance policies have policy factors, $50 to $75 per policy. They also have what we call bands, but I think of them as breakpoints in the mutual fund world. A $250,000 policy actually costs less than a $249,999 policy. A $500,000 policy is less than a $499,999. So we have 3 relatively small policies under everybody's $250,000 band. So if we just looked at one $350,000 30-year term, the premium really isn't that much different. In Claudia's case, it's less than $3 a month. And given that there's so many other things in life that they may want to have life insurance for, it's probably not a very efficient way to do the layering. Now, if they had a $1.5 million mortgage, probably would. Or if we tie it into other things in life, which is what I'm going to do right now. Because Juno, boom, struck again. Now they have that house, still have that tandem bike, but you know what? Now that tandem bike has 2 little carts behind it. Actually, it's got 4 because they have 2 for the kids and 2 for the dogs. So it looks kind of like a tandem train driving around the neighborhood. But life has changed. Claudia no longer has that option to just trade up and call David Beckham, because now, not just a thing, financial loss to pay off a mortgage, now we have children. Everything's changed. Now we're responsible for the next 2 decades or more for raising children who can't do that for themselves. So now the responsibility is crushing. They need a lot more life insurance, because if something happened to either of them, you have these little kids and 2 fuzzy dogs who are looking to them to care for them. Because now it's Father's Day. Father's Day is coming up. If anybody wants to tell my wife, I'd really like a new grill cover. So now that he's a father, Claude's a father, Claudia's a mother, they say, how much life insurance should I have? Well, now we're not just covering a debt, because before kids, Claude and Claudia could have just gone on their separate ways, earned their incomes, done whatever. Now they have children. So if one of them isn't able to work, then the other needs to replace all of that income that was going to fulfill the next 30 years of financial planning, investments, all of that. So now it's a much bigger deal. So maybe now, instead of the $350,000 to cover the mortgage, it's a $2 million number. And because everybody's planning on working for the next 30 years, they're still young, we look at a 30-year term policy. And Claude, assuming a preferred rate class, $1,735 per year. And Claudia, female rates are lower than men's, $1,335 per year. But now we are going to layer term, because we are going to be able to get over some of those break points. And we're going to tie it to certain things, like when the kids are out of the house. They may be crying while they're in the house, but parents are smiling when they're out of the house. Maybe getting through college and having that paid off, and having Claude and Claudia get to retirement age where they are financially independent. And so we use term layering because it saves money in the fact that we can layer for these different life events, and for the shorter terms, things that are shorter term needs have less premium than the things that are longer term needs. because as we have fewer years of income to replace, we need less life insurance for income replacement. So today, Claude and Claudia have 30 years of income to replace. That's $2 million. In year 29, when they say, yep, we're going to retire next year, they probably still don't need $2 million to replace that one last year of income. And so by using sort of a term layer, we can design a policy that looks at their particular situation and their lives. So instead of that $2 million 30-year term policy, we're going to layer $1 million of 20-year term, gets all the little kids out of the house, $500,000 of 25-year term, gets all of the bigger kids out of college, and $500,000 of 30-year term, gets Claude and Claudia to that sort of retirement age, the longest term possible, and at that point we're hoping that their need for income replacement is gone, they're financially independent, they work 30 years, they're good to go. Sometimes I have advisors ask me about this, well, things can change. Exactly. And we can always add different policies on top of some of these. Maybe 5 years from now, we say that 5 years from now, 25 years from now, which is when the 30-year term would end, isn't going to be long enough. It might be another 5 years after that. So then we add another 30-year term. So you can always build on top of this, but this is setting up the things that we know, always knowing we can add on top of it. And so Claude, when he's a year older, 1454. He has his kids now. He's 30 at a preferred rate. So layering those three policies saves a few $100s a year. It's about 16%. And Claudia, same thing, saves a little over $200 a year. Hers is 13% less. So we layer to save premiums. If it didn't lower the premiums, then we probably wouldn't do it because it's just more steps. But it tailors the policies to their particular situations. And the plus side, or the reason we do it, is because it saves them money. So how does Juno fit into disability? Well, hold on and I'll tell you. But in this case, we're talking still about Juno bringing people together. And she brought together Jonathan and Laura. And they were both medical residents in 2010. Aw, young doctors in love. Isn't that sweet? And Laura, when she was 30, she was specializing in ER pediatrics. And by working with her fee-only financial advisor, who she'd started working with, realizing that I'm really good at ER pediatrician, I'm really good at being a doctor, that financial things aren't my strong suit. So I need to talk to somebody. Luckily, she talked to a fee-only planner who was able to look at some of the options that she had through work for disability coverage and helped her get a supplemental disability policy through LLIS. And so her supplemental policy had a monthly benefit of $35.80. It had a future increase option, cost of living adjustment, residual rider, and her annual level premium just over $2,000. Jonathan, he's a few years older, and he was specializing in pediatric endocrinology. And same thing. They were a couple. They wanted help with getting their finances ready because they knew that it was going to, he knew that his pediatric endocrinology was going to take up all of his time, and so needed somebody else to help with that. And so actually as residents, basically had the same income, same benefits available. And so they got almost exactly matching policies. The only thing that was really different was that Jonathan's premium is less. Even though he's older, male rates for disability are lower. We pay more for life insurance, but we pay less for disability insurance, all things being equal. And so they were residents, and as residents do, they end up moving somewhere. So they have to pack it in. And so Laura, her next job was at another hospital. So Laura's benefits were pretty much the same. She had group benefits through her previous employer, still had them through the new large hospital, and so her supplemental policy pretty much just sort of stayed as is. There wasn't really much of a change for her. Jonathan, he was at the hospital, but then he moved into a private practice, and so he didn't have any group benefits, didn't have a group disability program at this small office. But because he still wanted to specialize in pediatric endocrinology, I want all of you to try saying that 5 times fast. Because he wanted to specialize in that, he was excited about this new move to this smaller practice. And luckily, he was able to exercise some of those future increase options on his existing policy. So the future increase option allows you to increase your monthly benefit without any medical underwriting. So that's key. So no matter what his health is good, bad, ugly, indifferent, he can purchase additional monthly benefits without any medical underwriting based on only financial underwriting. In this case, normally there's a trigger once every year or every 3 years, but most plans have a trigger that says, or if you lose your group disability benefits. And so his income was going to stay about the same, but he didn't have the group benefits that he had when he was at the big hospital. So he took his monthly benefit and exercised $3,550 of the future increase options. So his income allowed him to increase that much. There's no medical questions asked. Both the base benefits and the new FIO had a 3% cost of living adjustment, residual benefits, and combined his new annual level premium, $2,649. So the neat thing about the future increase options is that for many people, they may feel like they're locked in a job or an employer because they have certain benefits through that employer. With the future increase options, especially somebody like a resident or maybe a young attorney at a firm, they're at a large firm, there may be lots of benefits available, but they may want to start their own thing, do their own thing. By getting those smaller supplemental disability plans, but adding the future increase options, whenever they decide to move, if they say, hey, I can do this better myself, I can build a better mousetrap, I can pediatric endocrinology better over here than at the hospital. I know you can't make that a verb, but go with me on it. All of those things now, because I had group benefits, it doesn't prevent me from leaving because now I can move to the new place based just on my income. I can increase my coverage so that I still have full disability protection. So what does Juno have to do with ownership? Well, the titling of the ownership of policies can be very important. For the most part, most people own their own policies. A number of years ago, spouses used to own each other's policies because the estate tax rules work differently. Now we have the unlimited marital deduction, so most people own their own policies. The owner is the one who gets to control the policy, control the beneficiary, control this, that, or the other. And so the owner, most of the time, actually we all want to be a beneficiary, but if we can't be the beneficiary, then what we want to be is the owner. So I'm going to touch on a little bit about irrevocable life insurance trusts, which I'm going to abbreviate to ILIT just because irrevocable life insurance trust is a lot more syllables. So when we talk about ILITs, trusts, what are the benefits to an ILIT or these types of trusts to your clients, their kids, the beneficiaries? Well, in life, an ILIT is considered separate from the insured. An ILIT should have its own bank account. An ILIT will have its own tax ID number. It is truly a separate entity from the insured. Even its own mailing address. And as premiums are paid, there are going to be crummy letters that are sent out by the trustee notifying the beneficiaries that the money has come in. And so what we want to have happen is the donor, the insured normally, is going to gift the money into the trust. So by gifting the money into the trust and using the crummy letters up there in the middle right, then I am putting money into a trust for the trustees. It's still considered separate from the insured. And then the trustee takes those premiums and pays it into the life insurance policy. There's a lot of different steps here, but they're all sort of necessary so that the trust is considered a separate entity from the insured or your clients. So why do we do all those different steps? For this reason. Because at death, if I followed all the steps, it's important to follow all the steps. But if me being the insured, the trustee, everybody follows all the steps, the death benefit is excluded from my taxable estate. Whether I owe estate tax, may or may not be a thing, but it's still removed from my estate. So the life insurance proceeds from that insurance policy go into the trust, estate tax-free and income tax-free. That's why I do it. So for this policy, the trust is the owner and beneficiary. So the death benefit is paid to the trust account. And the trustee, who's this third, another person, disperses the life insurance proceeds to the beneficiaries through the trust provisions. So again, steps, layers, but these are the sorts of things that the IRS says for it to be considered a separate entity, you sort of have to have these different layers or walls. So when it's time for a life insurance policy, should we own the policy ourselves or should we set up an ILIT? Well, when it's personally owned, the proceeds pass income tax-free to beneficiaries. That's true. It's going to be true for all of the policies. But when I own it myself, I get to keep control to change the beneficiaries. That's a big thing. I can change it from my kids to my church, to my synagogue, to my neighbor, to the ASPCA every week if I want to. I get to keep control. Once I set up a trust, the trustee is the person who has the ability to change the trust or the beneficiaries of the trust. Now, what's the downside? The death benefit is included in my taxable estate. I wish that was an issue for all of us on the call. And if that's an issue for you, congratulations. But for most of us, a death benefit pushing us over the taxable estate of $5 million and change for a single or a couple of 10 million and change isn't really an issue as it once was. Now, why do we set up an ILIT? It's a way to control from beyond the grave. So when you have that trust, we've removed it from my taxable estate, so that's obviously a big one, but for a lot of people that's not the main reason. But we're gifting the premiums into the trust, and now the trust at my death gets this death benefit. And I have a trustee who is usually a different person than the trust beneficiaries. It might still be one of the beneficiaries of the trust, but many times it's not. So I can use, again, me being the insured, or your client can use an ILIT to set up a trustee and someone to protect spendthrifts. The trust says that the trustee has the discretion to give money to grown daughter for health, education, maintenance, support, not to exceed 5% of the trust amount, or an additional $2,000 a month. Making stuff up here, but that's the general idea, is that this is somebody who shouldn't, who parents would say this person is not going to be responsible with $1 million if they just had it, unfettered access to it. So the trust adds a layer of protection for spendthrifts. Or let's say minor children. Again, this is, now if I say minor children, a lot of different trusts can be set up to protect minor children. The ILIT would be if you have minor children and possibly an estate tax issue. Some people are just type A personalities. I want to leave money to my kids. I sure do. However, they need to have this done, that done. I'm not going to give that much more than this. And I think we're all a little type A on certain things from time to time. Again, the benefit, death benefit removed from taxable estate. Today, it's not a lot of our clients, your clients. Depending on how the election goes, that number may come down. Or it may stay the same because they'll have so many other things to argue about that it's just they're just gonna leave it alone. Who knows? But death benefit being removed from taxable estate is a reason that that financial planning did a lot more of these. I'll show you in just a second. What's the downsides to the ILIT? Well, there's the attorney fees for setup. You have to pay an attorney to craft an ILIT. It's a trust. Do you have a good trustee? I heard somebody once say that you always want your doctor and attorneys to be a lot younger than you. If I've got health issues, I don't want my doctor to be 30 years older than me, because when I'm going to need him or her, they're going to be long gone. So you want somebody younger, good trustee, somebody who knows what they're doing. And what's the downside? Once it's gifted, it's gone. So I've lost some control. Sometimes I call this the poor man's ILIT. Can we do the same thing with responsible children, responsible grown children? Can we do the same thing, taxable estate, gifting, removing it from my taxable estate, gifting premiums? We can do all the same things in a different way. Instead of the trust applying for a policy on the parents, the grown children apply for a policy on the parents. The parents gift the premiums to the adult children rather than to the trust. In both ways, premiums are gifted out of the estate. In both ways, the death benefit is never included in the parent's estate. With either one, remember, once you give it away, it's gone. So you can gift the premium amount, write the check to the kids. Do they have to pay it? No, they don't have to pay it. It's a check. They can do whatever they want with it. However, do mom and dad have to write the next year's check? No. They say, you didn't do it right the first time, Jimmy and Bobby Sue. We're not going to do that again. So, that's why I say responsible grown children. And just to be clear, I am not an attorney. I am not either of these three people. My favorite is Ben Matlock. I've been told I need to wait a little while before I can get my own seersucker suit, but we are not attorneys. Need to definitely check with attorneys on all of these different things, but this is a big picture idea of why we would use an ILIT, just to be thinking about that and the ownership, and why everything changes so frequently. The current estate tax rules are as permanent as anything government does, which means it is 100% permanent until they change it. So look at how it was 15 years ago in the estate tax. You had an estate tax for an estate over $1 million. Today, almost, it's close to $11 million. That's not inflation. That's not anywhere close to inflation. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you had none. So it all changes, and so we look at ILLIS and life insurance trusts really for two reasons. One, for estate tax planning, and as you can see, what it's going to be when the client passes away is anybody's guess, but also estate planning. How do I want to distribute my assets at death? And then how do I want those people to be able to use it? So the spendthrift child shouldn't get $1 million in cash. But my responsible child, that may be just fine, and maybe I don't want to put any qualifiers on him or her. So we have the ownership, hopefully to help with protection of our loved ones, because Juno knows that we love our loved ones. But Juno, even though she's a goddess, she doesn't always get it right. Now, it's not thunderstorming here, so I think I'm safe from a lightning bolt right now, but she doesn't always get it right. And so I want to tell you a story. Sam and Sally, they met a number of years ago. Sam had done very well, very successful entrepreneur. Sally had a little bit of her own money, but nowhere close to the amount of Sam's. Very well-to-do couple, but it was Sam's money. Sam had 2 kids. Sally had 1. This was a second marriage for both of them. Had been together many years. Well, not many years, but number of years living as this couple and with these kids, and eventually went to go see an attorney here in town, and they said, we need to do some estate planning. And Sam said, we need to do some estate planning. I've done well. I have some money. And so if something happened to me, you know what I want to do? I want to be fair. I want everything to be equal. And I think of Sally's daughter just like my own daughter. So, at death, I want my assets distributed 1/3 and 1/3 and 1/3. All of those kids are equal to me. I want it to be equal. I want it to be fair. And Sally said, I agree. I want it to be equal. I want it to be fair. And equal would be that your kids get half and my daughter gets the other half. What we have here is failure to communicate. What we have here is the English language, which is fallible, equal, fair, don't always mean the same thing to the same people. So Juno is watching this from the sidelines, shaking her head, going, oh, well, you know what? I do pretty well most of the time. Lightning bolt comes down. She said, I wasn't able to fix this one. And so if anyone can guess what happened to Sam and Sally, that's right. They had a unmeeting of the minds. The attorney said, I can no longer represent both of you. We need to get 2 different attorneys in here. And before too long, they were going through the big D, and I don't mean Dallas. So ended in a divorce because of these equal and planning that was, in a way, maybe done a little bit too late before some of these things had been seeded so deeply to say what was equal, what was fair. So what are the costs of planning gone wrong? Family harmony. This, I don't know much of the story after that, but I can't imagine it's all sunshine and lollipops. There are probate fees. When things are owned by a trust, money, assets go into a trust and distributed that way. Life insurance, annuities have named beneficiaries, so assets pass at death to a named beneficiary. All other assets that are owned individually have to go through probate. So life insurance, trust, are fantastic ways to distribute assets at death, regardless of who they may go to. Well, you know what? Sam and Sally, they had one attorney. Very shortly, they had 2 attorneys' fees. And then they had divorce proceedings. So we went from one attorney who was helping out with some estate planning to all of a sudden many, many more attorneys and attorneys' fees. And other costs, time before claims are settled. When beneficiaries are not named properly, these are things that can go wrong. If someone may try to name a minor child as the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, which in a way makes sense. I want my kids to have the money, but my kids are 6 and 8. If I tried to give them hundreds of thousands of dollars in life insurance proceeds, if something happened to me, that's not going to end well, except for maybe, Amazon and, the Build-A-Bear store. Ends really well for them, but not for my kids who don't know how to pay a mortgage and things like that. So there are certain things that had kids been named the beneficiary and somebody dies, then that has to go through probate to figure out who should be who is the adult who can take care of this. Is it a court-appointed person? Is it a brother, a sister? Trusts solve that. Naming adults solves all that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the LTC hybrid plans and a little bit about how we can do it right. So Stephanie is 56. She has a net worth of almost $6 million. So even under today's estate tax rules, she's starting to have a taxable estate. Part of the issue is that she owns a farm with some land that people rent and has a little bed and breakfast on it, but that's $4.4 million of her estate. So very illiquid, heavily weighted toward this one sort of land piece of property. Has another rental house that she gets some income off of, but another large part of her assets. So of her $5.9 million, about $1 million of it is investable. It's liquid. So we start to have a little bit of an estate tax problem, but we can probably figure that out because she's young, she's 56. But we start to have an estate planning problem because she is so illiquid with that one piece of property. So I worked with her fee-only financial advisor on a few ideas. One, we started talking about a life insurance policy so that at her death, whenever it happened, if it happened soon, if it happened later, there would be assets paid into this trust of $1 million. That's basically liquidity. Let's say Stephanie uses up all of her assets, that $1 million of investable, and for whatever reason, just normal retirement, loves going to the slots at the Hard Rock Casino over here. There's this life insurance policy that provides $1 million of cash when the beneficiaries need it the most, and that's when Stephanie's no longer there. The trustee, their daughter, the beneficiaries can write a check, maybe pay off any debt, do lots of different things. And the goal is to set it up in an irrevocable life insurance trust. One, because we are starting to have that estate tax problem, and so to add $1 million life insurance policy into her taxable estate right now just means that Uncle Sam is taking almost half of it. So putting it in the ILET using the annual gifts premiums, then we can remove those gifts from her taxable estate. That always helps. And then the life insurance will be held outside of the taxable estate. And her daughter is still young. She's in her teens. She's capable, all of that, but technically she can't inherit this estate right now. So the life insurance is there to help, so that there's also a trustee who could help manage this until she becomes of age and can take on a lot of this distribution. That's that liquidity for the trustee if the daughter inherits the farm. So if something happened to Stephanie today, daughter's still too young to take control of the asset. She's still a minor. So the trustee has $1 million of cash to buy time, most importantly, to service any debt, to keep paying for college, to do all these different things. So that's what that policy can do. But Stephanie, she's also met Victor. And Juno, Juno did it right. They're an item. They're engaged. And so Stephanie, really has two different competing loves. Her daughter, who she wants to inherit most of her money, and Victor, who, they are getting married. They do want to spend their lives together. But he has some of his own money. He's, not coming into this just trying to get access to Stephanie's money. So, excuse me while the the fire truck drives by my window. So we have that they want to use Stephanie wants to use some of her assets to help protect her and Victor in case they need long-term care. Because Stephanie says, I'm in this for the long haul. Victor and I, we're going to be great together. We're going to grow old together. But I have assets, and he's got some, but you know what? I want to be able to protect myself if I need long-term care, and you know what? I love him. So I want to be able to protect him too. So a neat thing with the hybrid annuity, and feel free to ask me or call Jerry if you have any questions, but a neat thing about the annuity is that it is an annuity. So Stephanie is the owner. She controls the cash value. She controls the beneficiary of the annuity. Stephanie is an eligible person to receive long-term care benefits, and Victor is an eligible person to receive long-term care benefits. So Victor has all the benefits of being able to receive money to pay for his care. But Stephanie still controls the cash values. She still controls the beneficiary designations. So if Stephanie dies, then the policy actually goes to her daughter, not to Victor. So the money, if Victor needs it for care, it's there. If Stephanie needs it for care, it's there. Stephanie's death, the policy can go to her daughter, and the daughter can use the cash values. And they can both be on claim of this policy at the same time, up to $6,000 a month each. So actually it could be, the policy could be paying $12,000 in monthly long-term care benefits. They can both share. Victor can get benefits from the policy, but they can even make an irrevocable beneficiary, the daughter, for the cash values of the annuity if something were to happen. So what did these few things do? Well, it kept the money in the family. The ILIT kept the liquidity there for the kids, for the daughter, kept the family harmony, provided long-term care benefits for the new spouse, but at the end of the day, the assets or whatever it might be, especially like the annuity, would eventually go back to the daughter. So Victor was covered for long-term care. The cash value is the money actually owned by the daughter at Stephanie's death. So it kept the family harmony. Because what says love like an insurance policy? I don't know. There's nothing that says love like an insurance policy. And Patricia and James, you know what? They think the same thing. There's Juno again sneaking up on them. You know why they look so happy? They just met with their fee-only financial advisor. And they just were talking to him about long-term care insurance. Look at how happy they are. Well, luckily for Patricia and James, they'd talked with you back in 2007. And they'd gotten a long-term care policy. Had a 90-day elimination period, 3 years of benefits with a shared care rider, had the 5% compound inflation rider, and it had $5,100 of monthly benefits in 2007. So that's what it started off as. Last year in 2015, the monthly benefits had grown to $71.76 each. So if they went on claim, needed long-term care, they could each receive up to $7,176 reimbursement for paid care that they received. Now, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you what happens if you read the title. Don't read too far. Okay, you figured it out. Well, what happened is that we only have Patricia. So part of the reason why the review was in 2015 is that he died. And so part of the review was this long-term care policy. And so she's the survivor. And so we looked at, what does this policy do? Long-term care plans have a really, really neat thing for widows or widowers when we have the shared care policies. So what happens at the first death is that in this case, he didn't use any of his long-term care benefits. So his unused portion of the long-term care policy gets added to her policy. So now she has 6 years of long-term care benefits on her policy. So her policy gets added by his benefits, his premiums go away. So basically she's paying the same premium she was a year ago for double the benefits because he's passed away. That's a really neat thing. For widows, now there's not another person to help care widows, widowers, using widows because usually men die first. But widows, no one there to help care. Spouses tend to care for each other for the first part of needing long-term care. They care for each other for a while, and then eventually it gets to a point where they need to bring somebody in or move to a facility. So in this case, there isn't that other person. So what better to have than more long-term care benefits? And in this case, Patricia gets double the long-term care benefits, but her costs don't double. So now she has that 5% inflation option and 6 years of benefits because she inherited his plan, his 3 years of benefits. And so part of what the fee-only advisor asked us was, okay, this looks really good, but can you double check for me? What would a similar policy cost today? Just because I'm a fee-only financial advisor. I don't really keep track of premium rates on long-term care policies. So is this a reasonable, a good, bad premium? Well, on a new policy, these existing policies with the shared care, most long-term care policies have a 20 to 30% discount for both people when you apply together as a couple. So the spousal discounts that had been on the previous policy aren't available for a new plan. And so in 2015, when we did this review, a policy to provide her with 6 years of benefits, similar monthly benefit, 5% inflation option, would cost her over $9,000 in annual premiums. And she's paying less than $3,000 today. So sometimes we don't have much of a recommendation. Our recommendation is to keep it and pay the premiums. Because again, what says love like an insurance policy? So how did Juno take us from Claude and Claudia, where Claude was just a lonely guy riding half of a tandem bike, which doesn't really work if you've ever tried it, but Claude all the way out to Patricia and Stephanie, who are doing things the right way to make sure that things are covered and protected. So thank you all for tuning in. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them in the little question box there in the GoToWebinar panel. But for those of you who might be new to us, we do a little David Letterman, I think most people still know who he is. A little David Letterman top 10, about 10 things that make LLIS different. Well, one of the first things we do for fee-only financial advisors are monthly webinars like this one. We have a few more coming out through the end of the year, and just a way to get a little brush up or touch up on things insurance-y, and a good way to get CFP CE every now and again. But what are some other things that make LLIS different? Well, we're not your competition. We only work with fee-only financial advisors. We do insurance. That's what we do. You do financial planning. That's what you do. So we work together as a team to save advisors time and to save your clients money. We pre-underwrite to avoid surprises. We provide advisor tools and client tools on our website. We are proud sponsors of a number of fee-only financial planning associations. And we have specialists in life, disability, long-term care, annuities, and hybrids, all here in our office in Tampa, Florida, where I'm glad to say that I am sitting in the air conditioning today. And when your clients get insurance through us, we keep you in the loop with our AIM system, or application information messages, so that fee-only advisors can keep on top of how their clients are progressing through the application process. And so 1 through 9 is almost about you, or the application process. Our last one, our number 10, is just that we help you, your clients, manage their policies in the future. So it's not just getting the policy, but reminding clients of when their premiums are going to be due with our advanced premium emails, or even notices when someone's 10-year term is coming to the end of the 10 years. What is the need for the insurance? Does it still exist? New term. Let it go. Maybe convert the policy if somebody wants to keep some coverage, but maybe their health has changed. So all things done to help you as advisors make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, and as I said, to minimize surprises. And so I haven't seen any questions come through on the little toggle box here. I'll wait for just one more minute. And if no one has any, then thank you all for being on the call. Thank you for your time. I hope you all have a great start to your summer. And again, just thank you for the opportunity to assist you and your clients.